So the other day I had a customer bring this MS 261 chainsaw into the shop for me to take a look at. The saw wasn't firing up and starting. Went through and inspected the saw, found out the top end was bad. It's going to need a new piston and cylinder. Replacement cost on those parts, plus the labor and some of the other stuff the saw need, clearly exceeded the value of the saw, so the customer told me to junk it. Being the guy that I am, I like to repair stuff and not throw stuff away. So I went ahead and bought the parts, and I'm going to show you guys how to replace the top end on the Stihl MS 260 chainsaw and go through and step by step what I have to do to take the old stuff off, put the new stuff on, and bring the saw back to life. So with that, let's go ahead and check out the video and I'll show you how it's done.
For this video, I went ahead and disassembled everything down to the cylinder just to make the video easier for you guys to see how I do the repairs on the top end of the chainsaw. I'm going to start by removing the spark plug, that way I get access to stuff a lot easier. Next, I'm going to remove the 4 bolts that hold the top end down. Next, I'm going to start to remove the manifold boot. Start by removing the washer and the sleeve that hold the boot into place. Once you get those removed, go ahead and push the manifold back through the hole. Just make sure that you're using your finger and not a sharp object, as you can puncture this. I have a rounded end tool here that I use to push it through. It doesn't have any sharp corners on it, so it makes real easy work for pushing the manifold back. Once you push the manifold through, go ahead and pull the top end off, and let's take a look at that. The piston is attached with a snap ring. Go ahead and take a flat end screwdriver to pop that piston ring out. Next, I'm going to inspect the crankshaft and the needle cage. This piston was just worn down over time. Notice the machining marks are gone on both sides. Also the steel gray color instead of a bright shiny color, meaning that the debris has got in there and sanded the piston down. The first thing I'm going to do is install a new needle cage. Make sure you guys are greasing that up with a high temperature grease. If you notice the piston, there's an arrow on top. That arrow is going to point to the exhaust side, so make sure that you guys are installing this correctly on your chainsaw. Some pistons will already come with one snap ring attached to the side of it. If yours doesn't, make sure you install one of them before you go ahead any further on installing the piston onto the crankshaft. Most of the time you're going to want to have that snap ring installed on the clutch side of the chainsaw, just because that breaks in the way. That way you don't have to disassemble more of the saw to be able to install the piston. Once you get the piston aligned with the crankshaft, go ahead and push the piston pin through. Sometimes these are called wrist pins. Go ahead and push that till it hits the snap ring on the other side. I'll take a small screwdriver and just push the piston pin all the way through, making sure that it's completely seated in there before I try to install the other snap ring. I always use a little bit of press fluid around there, so that way the snap ring snaps into place. There are tools that you can buy to install the snap rings. I've just done enough of them where it's pretty easy just to snap them into place with a pair of needle nose pliers. So on one end of the snap ring, grab it with your needle nose pliers, seat it into the groove that's inside the piston there, and turn it counterclockwise and rotate it and push it down at the same time until it snaps into place. Again, go ahead and take a screwdriver and make sure that that snap ring is seated all the way in there. The last thing you want is that snap ring to come out of there, because you will completely trash your new piston once the saw starts running. Now I'm going to seat the rings into place. You're going to look for a little stud sticking out, and then there's going to be a gap in the ring. Make sure that your ring is on both sides of that stud, so that way you can compress it down. If you try to compress it down while your ring is on top of that stud, it is going to snap your ring. I just use one of these plastic ring compression tools. You can get them on eBay or Amazon. They're not that expensive. They work really well for what we're doing here. Before I go any further, I'm going to install the new manifold on the new cylinder. That way it makes sure that everything fits right and it's easier to access with everything out of the chainsaw. Make sure your screw is facing up. That way if you ever do have to remove the manifold or you have to adjust it, you can easily access the screw to get to it. If you don't, well, when the time comes, you're going to have to take the whole top end back off the saw in order to remove that manifold. This clamp just needs to be tight. It doesn't need to be over compressed, otherwise you could break the clamp or end up puncturing the manifold. So again, press fluid around the top there. It's going to reduce the friction when I get the top end on. Don't forget to put your gasket on before you install the top end, otherwise you will have compression issues and you'll have to tear everything apart. Again, make sure that your rings are seated properly before you go ahead and try to clamp everything down. I use a wooden block to hold up the piston while I'm putting the cylinder down, so that way I can apply a little bit of pressure without the crankshaft moving. For this process, clamp your rings into place and grab your cylinder and start working it on top of the piston. Once you clear your first ring, go ahead and let up on the clamp, release a little pressure, and continue to pinch it and open it and pinch it and open it until you pass through on the second ring. Do not force the cylinder, otherwise you could break your rings. Once you've cleared both piston rings, go ahead and push the cylinder down on top of your block. Remove your block and then continue pushing it all the way down until you reach your gasket. Now install the manifold boot back into the hole. After you get the manifold in place, you're going to be able to push your cylinder all the way down to the crankcase and reattach it with 4 bolts. You can use needle nose pliers to pull through the manifold. Just be careful that you don't tug too hard or puncture it. Go ahead and seat the bolts by hand. Make sure that they're passing through the gasket and not on top of it before you go ahead and try to tighten them down. I'll do a little bit at a time on all of them, so that way everything's seated evenly and I'm not stripping the threads out by over tightening one and then not having enough room to get the other one installed correctly.
So it's always fun to work on saws, bring them back to life. I'll go through the saws, take all the parts off, run them through the ultrasonic cleaner, get everything put back into place, replace any name badges that are missing, any of the small components. If there's anything broke on it, I'll go ahead and replace it. So overall, between the cleaning and the repairs and everything else I did on this saw, the repairs itself were probably half an hour, 45 minutes. Doing the cleaning took a lot of the time. Got over an hour worth of cleaning all the parts in the ultrasonic cleaner. But it is well worth it. So now there's a nice saw that somebody can use. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like it down below. Also, if you guys have any questions, how I did the repairs, anything else on my content, make sure you guys leave a comment down below. And make sure you guys subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribing. So thanks a lot for watching my video. Have a great rest of your day.